Good evening. I would like to thank all of the viewers who viewed my videos. And for your information, the great majority of all the viewers are outside the United States. Only about 13 to 14% of the views I've gotten are here in the United States, which means the videos are getting a bigger interest outside the United States, which is understandable as to the nature of my videos. Tonight I probably will have a fairly short video. There's a lot of things going on right now, but things are not moving dramatically. And the first thing I would like to say is this. I have subscribed to channels in Russia, where Russian YouTube content providers provide content. I have been following with interest, and they're very unique people and they're very interesting people. And neither one of them is a big supporter of what is going on. That I can tell you for sure. To those YouTube content providers, you know who you are, because I have interacted with you. I have to temporarily kind of stop this because of the new sanction packages which are coming, and they're being prepared, so to speak, as we speak. The oil import stop is going to be part of this. And since I have a business in real life, which depends upon, certain sales I have to the U.S. government, to the military, I have to more or less comply with those things, even personally, because of the nature and what I do and everything else. So, but my goodbye to you is only a temporary thing until this is over, and then hopefully we can resume of what we're doing, and I will be able to watch your videos again and leave comments and that sort of stuff. I will not forget you. I just wanted to say that. Unfortunately, this is where we are in this, and that is something I needed to do. On my post on my other YouTube channel, we got a total of 17 votes in, and it was like 48 to 52%. 52% say no, we're not going to watch it for whatever reason. 48% said yes, we keep on watching it. So it's very close, and I guess it's going to go the way it is going to go. Under my particular circumstances, I wish I could, but it is against my best interest what I need to do in order to take care of myself, and I'm pretty sure you will understand that. And so we have just a goodbye, but I will see you again. In Hawaiian, they call that aloha ahui ho, and it means goodbye until we meet again. So it is not a final goodbye where someone leaves parts forever. There is a meeting in the future included in this, so it is not a permanent thing. It's only a temporary thing. So that's what I'm saying in Hawaiian, aloha ahui ho, until we meet again. Now, with the developments now on the military front in the Ukraine, I watch different channels, as you know. Mostly the Ukrainians are heavily into watching this, what they're doing with the maps and all of this stuff. And right now there is not dramatic wins for either side. It is a give and take. They move forward, they go backwards, and everything else. And so it is hard to tell who got the upper hand right now. In some small areas, where there's more Russian military, they seem to be having the upper hand. And in other areas where there's more Ukrainian military, they seem to be getting the upper hand, and that shifts throughout the day. It has shifted a couple times in certain smaller cities, and it is very difficult to predict this. But the overall strategy of the Russian military high command is basically still the pincer movements to get the Ukrainian troops encircled, especially in that westerly part of the Luhansk region there in the Donbass, in that pocket they got in there, they want to close that off and seal that off to basically get that whole eastern section there under their control, and that's what they're working on very hard. Now, the Ukrainians say they don't have enough ammunition and they don't have enough heavy artillery and heavy equipment, which is understandable, and I discussed this in the other video. I'm very much in support of this. I listened to Biden where he said he didn't want to send now the long-range artillery over there. I forgot now exactly what model it is. I'm not an artillery person, so I'm not really that familiar with the equipment. That is a little bit out of my league, so I don't want to get in there with the model numbers and this, that, and the other thing. However, they had the option, the Americans have the option to supply those artillery, long-range artilleries with a limited range so they wouldn't reach Russian territory. And that seems to be right now coming, or it's going to be set in motion to get this stuff over there as quickly as possible from the US side. In Germany, there's a lot of discuss right now with the political leaders because of the song and dance, or that dance and eggshell they have been orchestrating over there and what they're delivering and everything else. Like I said in my other video with Germany, the people who got elected there last year with Scholz and primarily the Social Democrats, that is a hardcore pacifist group of people you're dealing with. And we will see if they're going to deliver anything. My feeling is that they probably won't, and that will have repercussions against them in the next elections. That is something which is going to be a big topic there. So this is something the German population is on the side of the Ukrainian people, and they're supporting arms deliveries. They're not that worried about Putin. I think that the pacifists here have also an ulterior motive in this, and that is that they get the war to end so they can then hopefully resume importing gas and oil from Russia. I think this is what the underlying story is here, because the German economy is so heavily dependent upon the gas, and primarily the gas from Russia, not so much the oil, but the gas, to keep the production up and going. If this should completely collapse, then the German economy is most likely going to go into a major recession, because they're going to have to limit the gas to, they have to prioritize the deliveries on who gets what and this sort of stuff. And the larger corporations are probably going to be out at that point, since the socialists are in control, and they're going to make sure that the people are going to have this, that, and the other thing. The socialists never worry that much about the corporate sector. So that's going to be a theme in there. That is an underlying motive in there. I'm pretty certain about this, especially since Gerhard Schröder is a socialist. I don't know if he quit his positions over there, I think at Gazprom. It was in the board of directors, or he's not going to take it, and he dropped the other positions he had there in Russia. But he has not, they have not thrown him out of the Social Democratic Party yet. So which means that they're going to do this temporarily, and that's why Scholz and Macron are talking to Putin, and they're trying to get a peace or an armistice going so that the fighting actually stops, and then that goes into the same direction then already to appease Putin so he can keep then these parts of the Ukraine. And I think that this is very dangerous. This is my personal opinion. If you have someone who's going to invade a country, and then is not going to give that country back, basically, in an armistice, I personally, if I were in charge in the Ukraine, I probably would not go for that. And as a Ukrainian, I would be terribly, terribly upset with the German Socialist Party and whoever parties or politicians in Europe favor that kind of a solution. This is going to sour the entire European house idea, to begin with. And you have to realize this as a Ukrainian. I feel with you with this, as much as I would like to see peace. But if the peace is to be had only by yielding territory to the opposite side, then that would be a no-brainer and a no-go, in my opinion. That is definitely for sure. I would fight for that too in that particular circumstance, especially since there was no direct aggression of war on the Russian homeland. The Donbass thing has been going on now for 8 years, and it really, I don't think, would have made any difference if Biden got elected or Trump would have gotten reelected. Nancy Pelosi here in the United States said that she was worried about that Trump would actually push the button on the nukes. In this case, what we're having now against Russia. And Trump said it a couple months ago himself. At this point, he would start bombing the shit out of the Russians, out of Russia itself, with the American military. So we're probably in a good position that this hasn't happened yet, even though that some Russians believe that Trump is on their side. Who knows what he really would have done if he would have been in office, but he is not in office at this point. If Biden is really the better choice in this, I seriously doubt it. For either one of the two countries, it's not the ideal situation, having Biden in the office. I just wanted to mention this. Now, there's an old saying, the Chinese warrior, Sun, now I forgot the name. Sun is his first name. I forgot his last name. It is the great-grandfather who wrote the Bible of all Bibles on warfare. He once said, or he wrote in his statements, it is basically going that way. If you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you will lose every battle. If you know yourself, but you don't know or you don't understand your enemy, you will win some battles and you will lose some. If you know and understand yourself well, and you understand your enemy well, and you know your enemy well, then you will win every battle. And this is as true today as it was some 3,000 or 2,000 years ago when he wrote this. The Prussian military, back since 1800, has studied Sun. I cannot remember the name. You can Google it. And they followed a lot of this advice, what he had written there. And they had one Prussian officer who wrote a very popular book, which is sort of a sequel to this, what Sun wrote. And that book is titled Vom Kriege, from war. And that's what he wrote in there, was these, tactics and what you need and what you don't need. And one of the statements he said in this book was that you never have enough ammunition as what you had planned for during peace times, because in peacetime, 100,000 shells looks an awful lot. But once you're out on the battlefield, 100,000 shells are going to be gone in a week, in 3 days, in 2 days. Depends on how it goes. And that is always the great difficulty. And as a politician, or as a monarch for that matter, it is always difficult to sell military expenses or the buildup of military during peacetime to your constituents, whether you're elected or you have an absolute monarchy, because it always costs money for either one of the two forms of government. And usually it is tax money which pays for it. The United States has spent, on average, 600 billion US dollars. That's 600 with 9 zeros on it. For the last, I would say, 20 years, since 9/11. No other country in the world has even come close. The only other country who has spent more, or the largest and second largest amount of money spent, was about $150 billion a year, and it was the Chinese military, the Chinese government. So they were spending only a quarter of that on the military of what the United States has spent on our military system here. Just to give you an idea, Putin has spent on average $60 to $65 billion for the last 10 years every year on military upgrades and funding to begin with. So that is close to 1/10 of what the United States spent. So you can imagine if the United States was to get involved, really involved in this war, the Russian Federation wouldn't stand one chance, because we have basically outspent everyone. There's no question about it. In material, in supplies, in upgrades, in new weapons technologies, and everything else what came with it. And was it necessary? I guess so. If you're looking at our world in our current constellation, it was probably a good thing. So, with looking at Sun, if the Ukrainian High Command truly understands their own fighting capabilities, their mentality of their soldiers, of what they're capable and what they're not capable, what training they have, how far they can go, how willing they go, and the weapons they have, and they understand how to deploy the weapons and the ammunition at hand, they will be able to win this war regardless of what Russia did. Because from what we have seen so far is, in certain instances, the Ukrainians have won some battles and they have lost some. And the same is true for the Russian High Command. They have won some battles and they have lost others. So at this point, it's an equal match. And whoever is going to master the war, like you master a trade, a craft, they will win regardless of the resources they have. And that's the intelligence of the High Command. And whoever outsmarts the other side is going to be the winner in it. That's how war really works. Hitler, for example, was a sergeant. He wasn't even a sergeant. He was a private. And he understood some warfare, but he had no knowledge. He wasn't a traveled person. He had never visited Russia. He had never visited other countries outside than Austria and Bavaria for the better part. So he had no foreign experience. He had no clue what the Russian winter is going to be like. He had no clue what the Ukraine is going to look like it in the spring when everything melts, all of that snow melts, and everything turns into a swamp out there, and in those western regions of Russia as well. He had no clue, neither did his generals. They understood to a certain extent themselves, but they didn't understand the enemy, they didn't understand the terrain, they didn't understand the whole setup over there. The same was true in Africa. Rommel was a little bit ahead of him. That they lost the war was basically predictable right from the get-go. My second great-grandfather, Prince Albrecht, he was the governor of Braunschweig. back in 1880, I think he assumed that position. And his marshal, his court marshal, his son became, in the Weimar Republic, later on then, the ambassador of the Weimar Republic to the Soviet Union. And in 1936 or 1937, he was called in by Hitler, and he was asked about Russia and Stalin, because they were trying to work on the Stalin Pact, the Hitler-Stalin Pact, which I had mentioned in my other video. And he kind of prepared this whole thing in the background as the ambassador. Ribbentrop, as the foreign minister, got the credit for it, but it was done by that person, by the ambassador. In 1939, when the war started and the ambassador, it became clear to him that Hitler would not stop with Poland after the invasion of Poland on September 1st, and then the invasion of the Soviet Union 2 weeks later into Poland, it was clear to him. He flew from Moscow to Berlin, and he got an audience with Hitler. And he said to Hitler, he tried to explain him and warn him that if Hitler would consider invading the Soviet Union, that this would end in a disaster. And Hitler fired him, basically. He was immediately stripped of his office. He did not even fly back to Moscow anymore, because they winded up then, later on closing the embassy anyway. And he was basically told to be just quiet. But he warned Hitler, and he said the Soviet Union has great resources. There's a very fast land. The temperatures are very, very cold. And Hitler, of course, was so narrow-minded. He was a small-minded person. He really believed in this Aryan superiority, and the Aryans can run through the snow at minus 40 degrees Celsius with impunity. And the German tanks, they will just drive through the swamps like there's nothing. This is how far out of touch Adolf Hitler was in 1939 by the time he started the invasion in Poland. Just to give you a reality of this. And of course, my second great-grandfather, when he was the governor of Brunswick, was also put in charge then by the Emperor Wilhelm I of the defense of the German Reich, the First Reich. That was the original Reich, actually, which happened after the Prussian Franco French War in 1870-71. And he was tasked with providing protection and building up the military for defensive purposes against France, Belgium, Netherlands, and then primarily the eastern flank. At that point, Poland and Russia, with Königsberg and everything else, since that was still the Russian Empire at that point under Tsar Peter, I think it was, at that point. And he didn't trust them. So he was tasked with that, and of course he was familiar with all these military strategies. He fought in the war with my third great-grandfather. They both fought together in 1870-71. But neither one of the two attended the declaration of the Empire, the German Empire, at the Versailles Castle. Both of them had the opinion that that was an utterly unsuitable place to declare the German Empire after the victory of that war. That was, by the way, the last war Germany, before it really existed as Germany as we know it today, won a war. That was 1870-71. And they fought, so he knew Sun, and he knew the other guy who wrote that book, I forgot his name now too, from Kriege, and they won every battle they fought. My third great-grandfather, he was the one who lived in Dresden at the time with his second wife, and he had a stroke on the battlefield, on the very last battle, and they had to carry him back on the back of the horse carriage because he couldn't move anymore. He was halfway paralyzed. Back to Dresden, and then his health kind of deteriorated over the next year. He had one more stroke then in 1872, and I forgot now exactly when he passed away, but it was somewhere, I think, to the middle or end of 1872, about a year and a half after the Prussian Franco War ended in 1871. And neither one of the two participated in the crowning or as emperor, the ceremony there at Versailles Castle. From my view, from my understanding, from my family, I can tell you this was one of the stupidest thing anyone could ever have done. And this is the problem when people get drunk of their success from war. And Sun said that too. There's those people who win the war before the war ever starts, and they go in as victors and they will lose. And then there's those who look like the losers when the war starts, and they turn out to be the victor later on. So there's a lot of things. War is nothing new to humanity. This is something which has gone on for a long, long time, ever since we first started to throw rocks or hit each other with wood sticks over the head, basically, And people have always tried to battle things out when all arguments fail, when all common sense and reason has left the room. That usually is what happens long before a war starts, is that ideology takes over, and the ideology then is the ultimate cause for the war, because when people starting to push ideologies on each other, that then retaliation starts one way or the other. Now, with that being said, I believe that there's a very good chance that the Ukrainian High Command, if they have the marbles, and they have the understanding, and they have the humility, that they will win the war. No matter what the odds look like it, but there's a very, very good chance. Sun's theories have proven themselves in every single battle we ever had on this planet since he wrote this. And it will be true in this war too. So we're going to keep an eye on this whole thing, and I will check in probably next weekend, and then we see how this whole thing is going to develop. And with that, you have a great night.